Hey guys, Varric here. So today's video is going to be on the Council of Elders, the third boss fight in the Throne of Thunder. Now this fight's a little different, as there's actually four bosses that you have to fight instead of just one. Um, and it can get a little hectic because there's a lot of stuff going on, especially the first time you do it. Um, so we're going to kind of break down what each boss's abilities are. However, there's one overriding mechanic that each boss will have, and that's the Empower mechanic. Basically, each boss will randomly become empowered with the Spirit of Garajal, which will give them an added ability on top of their regular abilities that they do. Basically, what will happen is when each boss becomes empowered, they will kind of grow large and kind of turn purple. So it's kind of obvious which boss becomes empowered. Also, DBM will tell you which one will become empowered. Just, it's something to keep in mind. Basically, what happens is when a boss becomes empowered, they will gain an added ability. At the bottom of their HP bar, you'll see like an added little purple bar, which is the empowerment bar. And as time goes on, it will progress further and further on. The main goal is you want to take off 25% of their HP when they become empowered. Now again, they're going to become empowered more than once during the fight, so there's not really any exact HP, margin that I can give you. Basically, whenever they become empowered, you need to shave off 25% of their HP from that point. Once you do that, that boss will lose that empowerment, and then it will jump to another boss. However, if for some reason you're unable to get the 25% HP off of that boss, and their dark power bar reaches 100, they will gain an ability called Dark Power, which will inflict about 10k damage per second and increase 10% damage per second. So basically meaning after, say, about 5 seconds, instead of doing 10,000 damage a second, it's doing 50,000 damage a second, which is probably about the threshold which your healers are going to be able to manage to heal raid-wide. So if for some reason you can't get that 25% HP off before they get in Dark Power, you do have a couple of seconds to work with. However, after about 4 or 5 seconds, the damage starts to get too high, and your healers are not going to be able to keep up. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, keep in mind that each time the bosses become empowered, that they do 10% added damage. So if one boss becomes empowered and then it comes back around again, that they're doing 10% added damage on top of that. Also, it's the dark energy will generate 10% faster, and that remains for the remainder of the fight. So obviously, the longer the fight goes on, the more damage that will start to do. This is just a couple points to keep in mind. But let's go ahead and get started on the actual bosses. We'll start from the left and work our way around. The first boss, which is Saul the Sandcrawler. He has a few abilities. One of them is called Sandbolt. He'll just randomly target a raid member. It does about 150,000 damage to you and anybody that's within about 5 yards of you. So just try to stay spread out as much as you can. However, his main ability that he does is called Quicksand. He will target a random raid member. And it'll basically just put like a little sand trap on him. It does about 125k DPS damage. So if you actually get targeted with it, you immediately need to get out of it. Your best bet is just to disengage and get out of it quickly. If for some reason you're disengaged on cooldown, then you just immediately need to move out of the way. It won't one-shot you. However, the longer you stand in it, you will actually get a debuff called Ensnared, which will stack. And for each stack, it will slow you by 15%. So obviously, if you get 2 or 3 stacks on there, you're almost getting to a 50% slow speed, which you obviously don't want. If for some reason you manage to stay in it and it gets to 5 stacks of Ensnared, you actually become entrapped, which will root you in place for 30 seconds. And if you're standing in the quicksand for more than probably 3 or 4 seconds, you're probably going to die. The entrap can be dispelled. However, you should never be in the quicksand that long anyway. So it's just something to keep in mind. The ability that he will gain when Saul becomes empowered is called Sandstorm. He will basically hit the raid with about 35,000 damage per second for about 8 seconds, which is not too bad. But the main ability that will happen when he does this, each of the quicksands will turn into living sands, which are just little sand adds, which your tank needs to gather up, and you can AoE them down. Now, the first time they don't have a lot of health. They're pretty easy to kill, and they die pretty fast. Just keep in mind when they die, they will basically reapply that quicksand on the ground. So if they're kind of bunched up together, they will just drop a big pile of, big quicksand pile. So it's just something you need to keep in mind during the fight. If for some reason the living sand are still up, and when he comes back around to becoming empowered again, and he does sandstorm another time, the living sands will become fortified. This will basically heal each living sand to full HP, and will also increase all the damage that they do by 100% until they die. This effect also stacks. So ideally, if you need to kill the living sands before he does another sandstorm, that's the main point of that. However, most of the strats will have you burn Saul down first, to which he should probably never even get around to getting empowered. But I'll get into that in a second. But that's pretty much it for Saul. The next ad is the Kazra Jin, aka Blanca. If anybody that plays Street Fighter 2 gets that reference. He really only does a couple of abilities. The main one he does is called Reckless Charge, where he basically just charges in a straight line to a random raid member. It's kind of obvious. It'll be like a little cloudy storm graphic on the ground. It's not instantaneous. I think it's like a 4 or 5 seconds before he actually charges, so there's no reason why you should ever be caught in this. If you happen to be the person that he's targeting and you don't move, he'll basically charge at you and do about, I think it's like 75k damage. It'll knock you in the air. It's not a one-shot. It's not a huge amount of damage, but again, it's kind of a slow ability, so there's really no reason why you should really get hit by it. The only other ability that he really gains is when he becomes empowered, and he gains an ability called Overload. Basically, what this does, he'll basically just stun. He'll be stunned for about 20 seconds, and you can just go all out on him. However, keep in mind that while he has this ability on him, he will reflect 50% of the damage done to him back to you. So, if for some reason you're taking damage from an outside source, from another ability, or you're not getting healed a lot and you start getting below 50% health and you're still attacking, I would recommend to switch targets until you get healed, enough to get back up to close to full HP, and then you can go back to attack him. You don't want to kill yourself by having your damage reflected back at you. So just keep an eye on that. Really, other than that, that's all he does. He's not. There's not a whole lot going on with him. The next mob is High Priestess Marley. She has a few abilities that you really need to watch out for. Her main spam ability that she'll do is called Wrath of Loa, where she'll target somebody for 125k holy damage. There's nothing you can really do about it. It's just random. Just damage you have to heal through. One of her main abilities is called Bless Loa Spirit. Basically what this do is she'll summon like a spirit ad, usually in the form of like a snake or a spider or a panther or something like that. Usually DBM will announce when she does it. Of course, you need to, immediately when it spawns, you need to target it. Now these ads can be slow, they can be stunned, they can be rooted, they can be pretty much CC'd in any way. So there's really no reason they should ever get very far. Their main ability is if they manage to reach the one of the other bosses, and they will generally target whichever other boss is lowest on HP. They will heal that boss for 5% of their maximum health. If for some reason they're alive for more than 20 seconds, they will immediately teleport to that boss and then automatically recharge them for 5% of their maximum health. However, they should really not be alive for more than 5 or 6 seconds. They have very, very low health, and because they can be CC'd, they should never ever reach their target. But again, they're not a huge threat, but just keep in mind that when you see them up, you need to target them and get them down very quickly. Now, the ability that she gains when she's possessed by Spirit of Garajal is pretty much just a slight variation of the other two that she did. Instead of she'll still do Wrath of Loa. However, this will do slightly more damage, and it'll be shadow damage instead of holy damage. In the other ability that you do, instead of the Blessed Loa, she'll do the Shadowed Lotus Spirit. Now this one is kind of sucky because basically what it is, it'll target a raid member. And if it should happen to reach the raid member, it will instantly kill them. So this one definitely needs to be stunned or rooted or CC'd in some fashion as to make sure it doesn't reach whatever raid member that is targeting. Again, if it's alive for more than 20 seconds, it'll instantly teleport to the raid member and kill them. So these become imperative that these die, especially when she's empowered, because you do not want this to get to one of your raid members. That's pretty much it for her. However, during the fight, she will still spawn the Blessed Loa Spirits as the fight goes on. So as you're attacking the other bosses, just keep in mind that the Blessed Loa Spirit will still be spawning. So you need to switch targets to that to kill it, and then go back to whichever one is one of the bosses is empowered. The last one is Frost King Malik. His main ability that he will do is Biting Cold, which will target a random raid member for basically just a debuff stack, a frost debuff that does about 85k to anybody within 4 yards every 2 seconds for about 30 seconds. So make sure if you get Biting Cold, you don't want to be standing near anybody, and just make sure your healers are aware that you've got that a debuff on you, so they can give you enough heals. Really, the only other ability that you have to really worry about is when he becomes empowered. He does an ability called Frostbite. And this is basically kind of the opposite of Biting Cold in the fact that it does 100k damage with anybody within 5 yards of you. However, you want to make sure that there's somebody stacking on you, because the more people that are on you, it disperses the damage. Ideally, you want to have at least one other person stack on top of you. If you can, have at least 2 other people stack on top, because it really makes the damage go down quite a bit. But I think it lasts for about 30 seconds. So just make sure that there's somebody, at least one other person standing on top of you. The Frostbite and the Biting Cold graphic look kind of sort of the same. So just make sure that if for some reason somebody gets confused and starts trying to stack on you with Biting Cold, if they don't, tell them to get away. Or if it's a Frostbite, just let everybody know, hey, I have Frostbite, I need somebody else to come stack on me. Usually one of the ranged will do it. But that's pretty much it with him. So that's pretty much all the boss's abilities in a nutshell. Now, like I said before, one of the main accepted strats is to burn Saul the Sandcrawler down, mainly because of his quicksand and the sandstorm ability that he does can be kind of annoying. However, you do need a certain amount of raid DPS to get this done. I highly recommend doing this, but you need to see just where you stand. Basically what this strat means is you'll basically, at the start of the fight, you'll target Saul the Sandcrawler and you'll blow all your cooldowns and just try to burn him down as quickly as possible. However, he won't be the first person targeted with empowerment. I believe it'll be Frost King Malik that gets the first empowerment. I think that's normally what happens. So ideally what you want to do is you want to blow all your cooldowns and focus fire on Saul. And then you'll see Frost King Malik that gets empowered. Normally what will happen is you'll keep focusing on Saul even after Frost King gets the empowerment. However, once Frost King Malik gets to around probably 35 to 40% of empowerment, you want to switch to Frost King Malik, because you don't want that to get to 100%. Now again, this is going to be completely dependent on your raid DPS. If you think you can shave off the 25% in between, the last 60% before he reaches full dark power, then that's fine. You may even be able to push that to like 40 or 50% depending on what your overall raid DPS is. But to play it safe, probably the first time you get there, you want to switch over a little bit. Now you can leave maybe 1 or 2 of the melee on Saul and let them just keep DPSing him down, while maybe switching back and throwing a Serpent Stinger or something on Saul, and then going back to Frost King Malik. If everything goes well and you have enough DPS, Saul should die pretty quickly, and that will only leave the other 3 bosses up. And they're pretty easy to deal with. Kazra Jin, like I said before, he just does that one reckless charge, and then he just reflects the damage once he becomes empowered. He's a pretty easy boss. There's not a whole lot going on with him. Um, High Priestess Marley is probably the last real dangerous one, as she keeps spawning the lowest spirits. You definitely want to make sure you target those. Um, Other than that, though, that's really all there is to this fight. There's not a whole lot else going on. Um, just make sure you're not standing in the sand, quicksands when the bosses are going on until Soul is dead. Make sure you're standing out of the way with Kazra Jim when he does his reckless charge. Make sure you switch targets to the lowest spirits when they pop. Um, and make sure if you happen to get Frostbite from Frost King Malik on you, just make sure everybody's stacking on top of you. Or if you get Biting Cold, that everybody's staying away from you. But again, at first there's going to be a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff flying back and forth, so you kind of want to keep your eyes, on the ground as far as the sand traps and the charge from Kazra Jin and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or complaints or concerns, just leave them in the comments down below. Hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, give it a like and subscribe, as it helps me out.